The U.S. court rules that religious freedom doesn't trump student rights. A U.S. appeals court ruled on Friday that an Indiana high school did not break the law by allegedly forcing a music teacher to quit after he refused, on religious grounds, to use transgender students' preferred names. According to the Chicago-based 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, quote, the rights of the teacher, John Kluge, to exercise his religious beliefs were outweighed by the potential disruption that his conduct could have had on the learning environment at Brownsburg High School in Indianapolis suburbs, end quote. Kluge said his Christian religious beliefs barred him from complying with the school policy requiring faculty to use students' preferred names and pronouns. The school initially allowed Kluge to call students by their last names, but reneged after receiving complaints from students and faculty. He said he resigned in 2018 after he was told he would be fired. Kluge sued the school district in 2019, accusing it of violating a federal law that prohibits workplace discrimination based on religion. He was seeking to get his job back and for unspecified monetary damages. Kluge is represented by the Alliance Defending Freedom, a conservative Christian legal group, and in the lawsuit he argues that allowing him to call students by their last names would not create a burden for the school. It's an interesting decision. It's a little surprising to me because mostly we're hearing religious rights trumping everything else. In this instance, the Federal District Court of Appeals sustains the speech right over the religious right. Now, it's going to be challenged. This is likely going to get all the way to the Supreme Court. I call out the radical GOP and the radical evangelicals on this decision because we're reporting this story and saying, isn't this good news? And I'm muting that good news by saying, wait, it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. Yeah. But what's happening at Fox News tonight is radical judges. No, it's just judges that you don't like the decision for.
Yeah, basically.
And when this gets to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court reverses it, because likely they will, and sustain religious rights, then you're going to go, great judges, great. Wait, it's all a lie. This is all a lie. And at the end of the day, this federal appeals judge can do this. And at the end of the day, the Supreme Court judges can do this. What's important to all of us in this story is elections matter.
That's right.
That's the issue in this decision.
You know, it's important to point out that this teacher, and this is near where I grew up. I grew up in Indianapolis, so I'm pretty familiar with the vibe on the south side and the west side and all that. But teachers aren't there to collect a paycheck. They're there to serve students, and you don't serve your students by challenging or just outright ignoring one of the most personal things that make you who you are, and that's your name. Yeah. Your name can be given, your name can be changed, and some people don't want to, social studies is not football practice. You don't go, Ferguson, who was the 14th president of the United States? No. Your name is such an essential part. And if I wanted to be called Matthew, my middle name, my teacher should have called me that. If I wanted to be called Janine, my teacher should have called me that, because that is who I am. That is who I am when I am inside those walls. And it's the teacher's job to respect that and encourage people to grow. They might not grow the way you want them to. Oh, well, that's too bad. Your job is to help them grow to be who they essentially are.
And by the way, just a quick observation note, that's exactly what the federal appeals judge rules, that the speech rights outweighed your religious decision-making choice, and it was more important for the student.
Listen, they need to just pay this guy off and just send him on his way. For all the incredible teachers that we've all had growing up that allowed us to be us and gave us a safe space. Like I always mention Mrs. Parisi, because if it wasn't for her, I probably would have killed myself, okay? And that's the truth. There are these teachers. This is the kind of teacher that should not be allowed to teach a single extra day of his life ever. He is a gross representation. It doesn't help him. It doesn't affect him any way to call somebody by a different name. We're not saying call her Rusia la vagina. We're saying call him Tim. call her Christy. It's not something out of this crazy world. It wouldn't change his life, and you have a kid for an hour and then they go on to another class. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
But I think that the problem with so many of these stories that we're hearing lately is that they are now taking it upon themselves to make it matter to them, because that kid who does want you to give them a preferred name, for them, now they have become a person they have to proselytize to, and they have to convert to, and they have to do all of these things to. And the part of the story where they say using the last name, once that's happened, the entire school knows why you're losing last names. Everyone knows why you're doing it. So the entire point that you're trying to fix, that point's already broken. And so I think it's amazing when you have people at this point, and I freely will say this, if you have very strong religious convictions that mean that you cannot serve the population equally and not somehow preach to them, try to convert them, you should not be a public teacher.
Amen.
There are plenty of private Christian schools all over the country that will gladly have you.
Yep.
You
And
serve
let you
the-
misgender
Right.
everybody and
Yeah.
just
Right.
be your horrible
serve the
self.
public. If you serve the public as a public school teacher, you serve the entire public.
Yep.
I one final thought. We have to move on. I am constantly, almost on a daily basis now, someone brings to my attention, gosh, the news that y'all are reporting, it's so hard. It is so hard. And my answer is, well, what do you want me to do? Bury our heads in the sand? Because this is what's going on in the world. We can't win currently. This is a rare victory at the appeals level, which will continue to be challenged. That's my point. The one thing that I think is important to observations here is, are we on the right side of history? This teacher is not. And they can't sustain this forever. You can feel that they're holding on with their fingernails to keep the world the way they've always thought the world is. They won't be able to sustain it. They're on the wrong side of history. It was true in 1939. It was true in 1952 with McCarthy. It was true in 1964 in civil rights. It was true in 1974 in LGBT rights. And. They're on the wrong side of history. And so as we're telling all of these really hard and difficult stories, we should take some solace in that. We are on the right side of history, and it eventually will be proven. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.